We are wearing the same outfit. Very similar. All right, shades of red. I feel like I have colors that's really bad light. Good evening, everyone. I call this meeting of the Board of Education to order. We'll start by reciting our vision statement. Every school will be a thriving school that prepares every student to graduate from high school, college, career, and community ready. We'd like to ask for a moment of silence this evening for our district to recognize the passing of Jane Beverly, who was a senior admin clerk at Cherokee Heights Middle School. Jane is remembered as someone who enthusiastically approached each day with a smile, maintained a cheerful, positive attitude, and always had a story to tell. Jane's passing has taken a significant toll on so many students, staff in the Cherokee Heights community. We remember them tonight. Please join me in participating in a moment of silence in honor of Jane. Thank you. We'll move on to recognizing a resolution for our National Merit Scholars, and we'll hear from our Board Vice President, Maya Pearson.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Pearson, and I am the Vice President of the Madison Board of Education, Madison School Board of Education. Tonight we are continuing our recognition of our National Merit Scholarship finalists. To do so and provide an overview of the National Merit Scholarship Program is Enos Harvey, our Associate Superintendent of High Schools.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Tonight, we would like to recognize the 32 Madison Metropolitan School District scholars who have been announced as National Merit Scholarship finalists. These scholars represent the top 1% of students in the nation for academic performance on the 2021 preliminary SAT, National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test, and will have an opportunity to continue in the competition for some 7,250 National Merit Scholars worth nearly $28 million that will be offered next spring. Good luck to each of you. Now we'd like to congratulate each of these scholars who have studied, prepared, and worked hard to obtain this remarkable achievement. For those scholars that are here in attendance this evening, please come up to the stage when your name is called to receive your certificate and be acknowledged for your accomplishment. Starting with Liv Abeglin, Annalise Alvin, Emily Kai, Charlotte Chin, Madeline Dean, Caitlin Dew, Shane Duggan, Ryan Forbes, Kali Gagan, Aria Kitareddy, Caitlin Cole, Julia Lee, Tim Lee, Abel Liang, Carita Moreno, Julia Markert, William Nagera, Nina Pabayon, Sanjay Palatau Hill, Gabriella Shell, Kevin Song, Tyler Steinmetz, Karen Sun, Sarah Thompson, Barnabas Valco, Alex Viote, Joshua Wang, Lucas Walitz, Elliot White, Amy Yo, Ethan Yu, Laura Joe. Let's hear it again for all our amazing scholars with a round of applause.
Thank you.
For those students who are not able to join us this evening, your certificates will be mailed to your respective schools after winter break. Please, finally, visit the MMSD YouTube page to view a video featuring remarks by a National Merit Scholarship semifinalist. Now, I will turn the mic back over to Vice Chair.
So I'm going to read the resolution that was from our November meeting. Whereas the mission of National Merit Scholarship Cooperation, MMSC, is to recognize and honor academically talented students around the United States by conducting nationwide academic scholarship programs. Whereas these students have worked hard in the classroom, they've challenged themselves academically, and many participate in athletics, extracurriculars, and internships around the community, all in addition to their achievement in being scholars here tonight. Whereas the 32 Madison Metropolitan School District scholars who have been announced as National Merit Scholarship semifinalists, these scholars represent the top 1% of students in the nation for academic performance on the 2021 preliminary SAT National Merit Scholarship qualifying test. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Madison Metropolitan School District Board of Education recognize and congratulates these 32 students for being recognized as National Merit Scholarship semifinalists. Be it further resolved, this statement be permanently imprinted into the Board of Education minutes for the meeting of November 21st, 2022. Congratulations.
Do you have anyone registered online? All right, we will now hear from the folks who have registered online to participate in public comment.
Our first person is Patrice Hutchins.
Hi, everyone. My name is Patrice Hutchins. I'm currently one of the assistant principals at East High School. I am also a proud graduate of East. And I'm here today to discuss the value of universal honors and the benefit of getting rid of standalone honors. As a student at East, I applied for and was accepted into honors, was then called TAG English. I was encouraged after my freshman year to apply for more TAG classes by my counselor. And I distinctly remember telling her that I wanted some classes where I was seen as normal. In my TAG English class, I was the only Black student and one of 2 students of color. In my core classes, while I could have been pushed harder, I also didn't have to deal with the additional stress that comes from being the only in a class. I didn't have to deal with being told that I didn't belong in that class with jokes about being a token or being asked to speak for my entire race. If universal honors was an option for me, I would have been pushed academically in a space that felt safe emotionally. While we have made significant progress since I graduated in 2005, when speaking with students of color in my last 11 years in the district, I've heard stories so similar they could have been my own. Beyond my personal experience and anecdotal experiences I've gathered from students over the years, we need to acknowledge that standalone honors segregates our students. While I don't think that is the intention, it is the effect. Removing standalone honors does not remove rigor for our students. To the contrary, it increases rigor for all. I have worked in 3 high schools in MMSD, and East has the strongest efforts in getting students of color to participate in honors classes. However, similar to my experience, many still feel like they do not belong. Teachers can effectively reach all students in diverse classroom. I watch it every day in our earned honors classes that we currently have at East. Diversity opens up many possibilities for grouping different kinds of learners, exposing students to different perspectives, building empathy, and redefining community. All scholars want to learn. I assume that we all believe this. We have to stop giving the message that some want to and others do not, whether explicitly or implicitly. Every year, I have community members ask why they should send their students to MMSD over neighboring districts. I have always given the same response proudly. In MMSD, one of the best parts is that you get to learn alongside students who look like you and many that don't. This is not the case everywhere else around our communities. However, the vast majority of neighboring districts have already done away with standalone honors. Why do we believe that they are more committed to equity than we are? It is not enough for our students to see peers who don't look like them in the hallways or the cafeteria. Is that enough for us, or do we believe and hope that they can connect and learn deeply with and from each other in classrooms? Each of our high schools has 2 schools within it. I believe that diversity enriches the learning of our students, and my question for you all is, do you? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next online speaker is Marjorie Passman. Marjorie, we're ready for you if you're available.
All right, our first speaker for in-person public comment is Michael. Thank you.
Get this to start. Do I need to do anything to turn the mic on?
You can start.
Okay. That was my question. There are a lot of things on this. There we go. It's on? Great. Hi there, I'm Mike Teitelbaum. I'm the parent of 3 current MMSD students. And I also want to say something about this discussion about eliminating standalone honors. And I think what I want to say just really briefly is something about how we got to this point. I have been working with other parents in this district on the topic of advanced learning for over half a dozen years. When the last district advanced learning plan was made, there were consultants brought in, there were a series of conversations that were held with parents, students, and teachers. I was involved in that process. I went to some of those meetings. There was a plan, the wording of the plan was brought to us, and we had comments, and there was feedback, et cetera, et cetera. This issue of eliminating standalone honors has gotten incredibly contentious in this district. And there are a lot of reasons for that. And I think one of the reasons is that there hasn't been nearly as much collaboration along the way. We have an advanced learning advisory committee, right? We have instructional working groups. I go to all those meetings. I watch all those meetings online. I'm probably, of all the parents in this district, one of the 20 most up to date on what goes on with all that advanced learning stuff. And from the first time the idea of eliminating standalone honors was presented, it was presented as a decision that had already been made. And I think what's been hard about that is, look, there are a lot of reasons. And I think we all know we're not historically naive. We all know how the system got to be the way it is and whom it was intended to serve. But there are also a lot of questions. There are questions like the ones Patrice was just addressing about whether, if we move to a system of purely earned honors, is that going to serve adequately a group of learners, anywhere from 1%, as you said in our last meeting, Dr. Jenkins, to maybe 3 or 5%, depending on which studies you read, are those students going to be adequately served by the system that we're wound up with? Not just the students who have been taking these classes, but the students who should have been taking these classes, and the students like Patrice who should have been made to feel welcome in them all along. And these are questions, and I feel like if our educators had met with the community and talked to the students and the parents and the teachers all along, presented research, because there's research pointing in both directions on these questions, and said, look, this is what we're hoping to do, this is what we're planning to do, this is why, and this is why we think it'll work, I think we could have avoided some of the conflict that we've been seeing in these meetings and in our public conversation around this issue. And so the last question I want to leave us with is, if the plan to eliminate standalone honors passes, how will we know if it's worked? Right? I mean, all the metrics that have been presented in the plan are, we're going to check how many students are taking these new kinds of classes. How will we know if the new kinds of classes, or really the earned honors classes that we've been seeing for a while, are serving the students who need extra supports in the way that they're supposed to? How are we going to know if the plan has worked? And if it's not working, what are we going to do then? Thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
Dal Underberg.
Earlier this month, I had the opportunity to talk with Alicia Motri, a member of the Strategic Framework Recalibration Team. My intention was to focus the conversation on connecting the dots between our vision, our framework goals, and our achievement metrics. We discussed how assumptions impact our analysis of data and decision-making. Children's author Lemony Snicket reminds us that making assumptions simply means believing things are a certain way with little or no evidence that shows you are correct. And you can see at once how this leads to a terrible trouble. As we examine our framework, how are assumptions impacting our commitment towards a meaningful recalibration? Are our graduates assuming earning a diploma without literacy will open doors into meaningful education, training, and employment opportunities? Are students assuming their schools have taught them enough to be informed citizens, competent consumers, and self-determined advocates? Are parents assuming our schools are preparing their children to meet the realities of today's challenges? Our current college and employment landscape relies on proficient levels of literacy. Chamber of Commerce members assume a checked diploma box on an application implies an applicant's ability to read. Professors and instructors don't assume, but remain hopeful remedial coursework will rescue those unprepared for the rigors of their college classrooms. Our current framework goal focuses on how many students enroll into post-secondary institutions. For a true measure of accountability, why can't we extend this focus on how many finish his, her, or their first year? This calibration is our chance to focus more on getting students ready instead of just getting them out. Moving forward, can our district heed Snicket's warning by grounding all achievement, including graduation, with proficient levels of literacy? Why can't every student access their 20 years of free public school education to make sure they are proficient readers? Why can't every student with disabilities benefit from CCR IEP guidance and acquire the high stakes level of literacy required to accomplish post-secondary transition goals? As part of this recalibration process, we need to acknowledge the 4-year completion rate as a red herring that undercuts accountability. I can't find any statute or elected official supporting on-time graduation without literacy. I haven't talked to any education leader who supports kicking the can of illiteracy down the road into colleges, businesses, and communities. Yes, DPI is interested in how many students are able to prepare themselves in 4 years, but they also acknowledge it takes 5, 6, and sometimes 7 years for others. Imagine the exponential benefits of adding proficiency levels of literacy to our graduation readiness metric. We need to turn assumptions about literacy achievement into assurances. We have learned that anything less predictably leads to terrible trouble. Thank you.
Andrea Miserelli.
All right. Good evening. My name is Andrea, and I'm here as an MMSD resident, proud graduate of MMSD, teacher, and proud to be here with MTI. Last meeting, Jenkins, you said we're not shy, so here we are to speak. Right now, the focus of MMSD should be retaining staff. The less staff that leave, the less vacancies we have. It was mentioned by HR at our last handbook meeting that there are 100 teacher vacancies. This isn't including other positions. How can our students learn if we don't have consistent staffing in our schools? Unfortunately, I've already heard rumors from other staff saying colleagues have mentioned that they will be switching school districts at the end of the year or leaving education. We can't afford that. MTI's biggest push is to retain and attract teachers so there isn't a staffing shortage because our students deserve to have consistency in their classrooms. There are plenty of certified teachers in Dane County who are choosing not to teach anymore. This is a mass exodus of staff. We have to prevent that. The only proposals that were introduced by MMSD at our last meeting were all deficient oriented, and if adapted, would make employees relatively worse off without any benefits to recruiting or retaining educators. I was shocked that eliminating benefits in our handbook would be the school board's priority to retain and recruit teachers. I don't believe it fits the 5 priorities that were presented. Empower school communities, invest in people, streamline priorities, plan for the future, and embrace innovation. There are some simple things that the school board and administration can do to retain staff. One thing that wouldn't require any money or time is to give out real contracts in May, like what had been done previously all the way up until 2020. This causes so much confusion and shows disrespect that our own district can't even give staff a real contract. Other things like ensuring staff self-directed work time during the school day for educators to do what is necessary to support students and families that they serve is essential. Providing time for special education assistants to work with teachers to collaborate around students' needs. Transparencies over schools' allocations to the public. I know that Dr. Esser has talked with the school board about getting to national level support services standards in our schools with their ratios per student. What schools are meeting them? How far are we to go with them? Providing school-based subs for schools who before the pandemic had multiple unfilled positions daily. Since the pandemic, they're even worse getting the number of unfilled positions at their schools. Lastly, full cost of living raises should be given yearly before staff have to turn in their contracts on July 15th. MMSD has compressed the salary schedule multiple times to recruit new teachers, that if someone who's been in the district for over 6 years, they leave and go to another district and come back, they would be making $10,000 more in MMSD. Every Dane County school went to referendum this past fall, looking to help with the cost of living, except Madison. The longer the school board waits to change the handbook or decide on the budget with the cost of living, more and more teachers are leaving. On December 14th, the New York Times had an article on teacher shortage. I can email it to you all, but the last paragraph summed it up. Reformers may want to give priority to paychecks, working conditions, teacher autonomy, and punishing workloads before attempting to impose higher standards, tougher evaluations, and less job security. If the handbook committee is going to make real changes in our handbook to retain and recruit staff, more time than January 15th will be needed. MMSD can't afford not to make the changes for next year, so we're not in a worse staffing shortage than this year. We need impactful change in our handbook before May 15th, or the mass exodus of staff will continue. And it'll become impossible to staff our schools with qualified teachers and the staff that our students deserve. Thanks.
Liz Lauer.
Check. All right, first I want to thank you all. I know this is a hard job and it's a hard conversation. I am one of the parents who submitted a letter to the board, and I wanted to just kind of go through the 4 points of that letter that was submitted on the 16th so that it's clear. I'm a parent at East and at O'Keefe currently. The letter that we submitted to the board was a 2-week process of parents who came together after the December 5th meeting, where you guys all debated your positions on eliminating earned honors. It was across the district. We had parents who just kind of stepped forward and said, these parents are concerned. These parents are concerned. I have over 130 emails in my box about this, and I've tried to add every parent over a weekend to this letter. So it was quite an effort. The letter addresses the following concerns from the parents. We feel like there's a lack of communication and transparency to the parents and the students. We feel like there's additional focus that needs to be implemented in early education where these disparities begin. Exacerbated by the pandemic, we are still working through the staffing issues in MMSD, and that making sweeping changes or eliminating standalone honors will only contribute to further instability in our schools. In the end, we are asking for collaboration with students, parents, and staff so we can have a joint vision that we are all fully invested in so all of the students can reach their full potential. I also wanted to speak about my family's experience in MMSD. We are very much committed Eastsider parents. We attend all the stuff. I am a second-generation college graduate, of which in my family, only my father was a first-generation college graduate. So I understand the value of education. My dad actually taught us, taught us calculus in the dining room wall. My 10th grade student entered 9th grade in an ITC pathway, and the work was not very rigorous at all. And our family did not complain, but a lot of families asked for more rigor. This was last year, and nothing happened. My student was bored. There was no layering. There was no stacking. I've been going to these meetings trying to understand this information, and it just wasn't there. So he actually went in and redid all of his coursework and ended up in all standalone honors courses. I have other examples, but I don't want to waste your time tonight. I want to ask that we have a clear vision and we work together to get there, and that we bring up all the students, but that our students don't sit in classrooms where they're not getting that in the first place, and that we can start working in these embedded or earned honors classes and getting that rigor into those classrooms. Because at this point, I feel like in 10th grade, my son's in classes where kids aren't participating and he's stuck at the same table for the whole semester. We just learned this. And one of his teachers, who's so proud of him, said, you know, your son has been trying to lift these kids up all semester. And I don't know who wins there. Those kids never participated. My son never got to be in a classroom at a table where 4 students collaborated. So I feel like, you know, the answer is still out there is who's benefiting. You know, my student isn't, but I don't feel like those kids who weren't wanting to be in that class were either. So I just feel like we need to start doing deeper work to get to the answer. Thank you for your time.
Joan E. Jacobson.
Good evening and happy holidays. Forgive me, I have to read this. I'm a teacher. I love to talk. Hi, I'm Joan Jacobson. I proudly taught at La Follette for 30 years. However, proud is not how I feel today about the Madison schools. Instead, I'm sad, disappointed, and frustrated, and I know I'm not alone. So many teachers and educational assistants I talk with in our district tell me they don't feel valued, they don't feel respected, and they don't feel heard. Little wonder we have staff shortages. Some of my friends even tell me they don't think they'll make it to retirement age working for the district. As you know, some of our schools are not functional. We have some administrators who are not functional. We have some policies that are not functional. Value, respect, and being heard. This year, MTI surveyed the staff and 3 common areas of concern were evident. The survey, called the Camping for the Schools Madison Students Deserve, found that first, student-centered staffing was a major problem. This included proper staffing, smaller class size, and adequate support staff. It's December and the district is still not fully staffed. I also have retirement friends who want to sub. I think they're nuts. They tell me the application process is inefficient and cumbersome, and they've gone through teacher licensure. Secondly, from the survey, fair pay with cost of living adjustments and regular pay for extra duties. Some process has been made in this area, though we've had to fight terribly to get it, especially for educational assistants who barely get paid as much as Walmart if they worked at Walmart, yet they influence students' behavior and lives daily. Third, from the survey, respect for staff time, including prep time, collaborative time, and professional development. As you know, teachers are regularly asked to cover other classes during their prep time because of staff shortages. Can you imagine teaching full-time and not having a prep hour? I used to use every single minute of my prep hour to make copies, enter grades, contact parents, contact counselors, organize field trips, find 3 different reading levels for the homework, writing up behavioral referrals, and if there's still time, go to the bathroom. One science teacher told me she recently stopped taking coffee and water to school because she had no time to take a restroom break. Of course, administrators want us during passing times in high schools to be in the hallways. In the 30 years I taught, do you know how many times I saw my head principal in my hallway? You can count it on one hand. And elementary teachers have millions of different preps a day and subjects to teach. How are they supposed to work without a prep time? A special education I went to dinner with recently told me she was working the jobs of 3 people since there are so many vacancies in her school. She has the dark circles under her eyes that equal mine, and she's half my age. She said she can't remember the last time she sat down to eat her sandwich. This is a recipe for burnout, even for the most passionate and dedicated teachers and assistants. They don't feel valued, they don't feel heard, and they don't feel respected. I would like to be proud once again of Madison Public Schools.
Susan Cohen.
My name is Susan Cohen. My reason for speaking here in person is the emails I send to the board go unacknowledged, with one notable exception. Thank you, Nikki, if you're here. I am an MMSD parent, grandparent, and community member. I am a retired MMSD teacher. I care deeply about Madison schools, and I want the board to hear me. I want a voice. Specifically, I care about respecting teachers and staff's time and developing policies to protect teachers' directed collaboration and PD time. I care about fair pay and creating a budget that ensures full cost of living raises. I care about students and doing what we know leads to student success, class sizes capped at manageable numbers, and enough support staff to meet student needs. So I'll end with just 2 questions. Do you receive my emails where I lay out my concerns and possible solutions? I suspect you must, because I get that one board member who responds. And if you do receive them, can you acknowledge them so I know my voice has been heard. Thank you.
Bonnie Augusta.
I'm Bonnie Augusta, I think 36-year full-time retiree from the district, and I went back part-time 4 more years, so maybe 40 years, but again, I'm old. I want to talk about respect. This is all about respect. Respect for your constituents. While I haven't sent you emails, I have made telephone calls that go unresponded to. This is all about respect. Respect for our educators, all of our educators. A cost of living increase in their pay is not an increase in their pay. That's just getting them equal to what they were the year before. School positions need to be in the schools, not outside of the schools. And there needs to be protected collaboration time for every member of a team. Because how else can you be a team? This is all about respect. Ultimately, the respect for all of the students and what they deserve from their education. Thank you for what you do. I know it's a hard job, and I respect you for that. Thank you.
Heather Daniels.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for being here. I'm Heather Daniels. I have a 9th grader at La Follette High School, and thus my family will not be affected by the proposed changes to honors at MMSD high schools. I hope we can all agree that every student needs to be supported to achieve as much as they can, and that every student deserves to be challenged in the classroom. The main concern I hear from parents is that universal honors will not provide curriculum that is challenging for all students. This is especially concerning in 9th grade, where there are few to no opportunities for advanced curriculum otherwise. The description of embedded honors courses from students don't seem to align with what some students might need from an honors course. The change you are discussing tonight would eventually affect about 25% of the high school students in MMSD. That's how many of them took standalone honors in the first semester of the 2020-21 school year. That's 25%. In addition, each high school is in a different place in the implementation of embedded honors. In some schools, it feels like it's past time to look at changing things, but that's not the case everywhere. For instance, my son didn't have the opportunity to take any embedded honors courses this year. An all or nothing approach is often not the way to implement a new strategy or program, and I would argue that's the case here. If the board wants to move ahead with removing standalone honors courses, you should consider a stepped approach. Implement changes slowly so the district can learn from the experience and make changes. Build assessments to measure whether it is achieving what the district wants it to achieve in regards to equity, and figure out if the course serves students who have struggled academically and those who excel. You could use the next year as a proof of concept with proper assessments. After all, students are only in 9th grade once. For them, there are no do-overs. So as a district, we should be doing what we can to limit their exposure to unintended or unanticipated consequences.
I want to thank everyone who participated in public comment this evening. I move that the Board of Education approve the minutes from the regular board meeting dated November 21st, 2022. Joanna, your advisory vote?
Second.
Thanks. Board Member Pearson.
Yeah, I approve.
All those in favor? Motion carries 6. I have a summary of our written statements one in support of learning more about compensation available to Doyle Central Office, specifically senior level, via the receipt of the 2021-2022 financial audit statement. 5 opposed to sunsetting standalone honors courses and just having universal earned honors. 5 in support of universal earned honors and the sunsetting of standalone honors. We'll move on to the board president announcements. Celebrating our students, the board would like to congratulate the Madison East Theater Production Team on its award-winning performance at the Wisconsin Interscholastic Theater Festival. The team was recognized for ensemble and student Nevea Frankhauser and Eula, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm gonna butcher this last name, Cubis and Cece Shervin received outstanding acting awards. More than 40 scholars in grades 9 through 12 participated in the team's production. To make it to the state competition, the team advanced its one-act play, Found a Finger, through the district and sectional level competitions in October and November. Celebrating our staff. Congratulations to 2 MMSD teachers on being named 2022 Outstanding Cooperation Teacher Rockwell Award recipients from the University of Wisconsin-Madison of Education. Josh Rinneking, kindergarten teacher at Stevens Elementary, and Marguerite Fairchild Gongora, 6th grade teacher at Toki Middle School. The award recognizes excellent teachers who have chosen to pass their expertise by providing professional experiences for UW student teachers. The board would also like to recognize and congratulate MMSD District Athletic Director Jeremy Schultz for being recognized as the Distinguished Service Award nominee for the Section 9 by the Wisconsin Athletic Directors Association. Celebrating our families, the Board of Education would like to wish our entire community a safe and enjoyable winter break. We look forward to a new year full of learning, relationship building, and memorable moments. We'll now hear from our superintendent.
Thank you so much, Board Chair and board members, and to all of our speakers this evening. I tell you, one thing about Madison Metropolitan School District, we're a very proud district, and we have a lot going on in our district. And through the, can you all hear me? Oh, sure. Okay, that was the best part that you missed. No, but again, thank you to the board chair, thank you to the board members, and thank you to our community members who came and spoke this evening. And I said, we in MMSD are very proud. We have a lot of things that's going exceptionally well. How about tonight with our 32 National Merit semifinalists in the top 1%? You're talking about academic All-Americans. Please give them another hand, okay? But I have to say, I am not surprised. I go through these buildings. Today, I spent my time out in the buildings last week, and daily, this is what we try to do. And you see the just enormous talent from our students from pre-K. Some of the questions that I receive, and I've been receiving right now coming up to break. I was out today, and you would think 2 days before you get out, students would be relaxing, teachers would be totally relaxing. And yes and no. I mean, we are recognizing the humanism in where we all are, but yet learning is still occurring. I've had the fabulous opportunity on Friday to attend La Follette High School and to see some of the wonderful things that's going on there. The students, they had a program recognizing cultural experiences. In our district, you can see everything. You can see all kinds of students We see parents who are participating on Friday. The parents at La Follette High School came in and did a special recognition and appreciation for our staff. You can go to West High School. You can see things that are just fabulous, just going across all 6 of our high schools, all 14 of our middle schools, and 32 of our elementaries. And I have to say, as superintendent, I'm very proud of what we have, but we do know with success come challenges. We're not done yet. We're not done yet. And it's okay to be intellectually on opposite sides, because that's where we begin to see and find a path forward. I think this discussion that we've had and we continue to have, this is not just the beginning of a discussion of where we are academically. This is about what we stand for in Madison for all of our children with our different perspectives. I love what the parents said tonight. This is historical. We know that this didn't just start today, but the willingness in our community, our staff, yes, we are short staff, but I appreciate the way our staff step up. And I do agree with the speaker in terms of how we have to respect one another. We can get through this together. I come to you today to just tell you about a little student I met in one of our schools, and it was through a tough budget discussion and talking about staffing and just a little bit tense discussion. And the student said, "How are you, Dr. Jenkins?" I said, "Well, to be honest," I said, "I'm thinking about things, a little tense day to day." He said, "Oh, I can help you." He said, "I've been going through some breathing techniques. So just breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out." So I'm going to say to our entire community, if all of us just take a moment, breathe in, breathe out, and just repeat that till we get to a point to where we can engage with one another in a very respectful way. Human decency is key at the end of the day. I may have my thoughts, and I am passionate about them, believe that. Unapologetically passionate about it. And you may have yours, and you can be unapologetic. But let's not do anything that's going to negate the opportunity for our children to realize something as human beings that we haven't fully realized yet. So I just want to say to you, around the district, our students are back. They're bringing the magic, that smile. You see staff hugging them again and just working collaboratively with them in the learning spaces. And I appreciate that. And I thank you. And I want to tell you, going into the break, I'm asking everybody to please take time just to enjoy one another and let some of this go until we get back here in January, because it's on again. Okay. Thank you so much, Board Chair, and all the rest of the board members. And thank you all for a wonderful first semester.
I greatly appreciate the meditation exercise. That was your announcement
Yes.
for this month. It's a nice way to say goodbye to 2022. We'll move on to reports that proceeded through the instruction work group held on December 5th, 2022. Board Member Castro.
Thank you. This month on December 5, we held our instruction work group meeting. We had a health services update discussing some of the important health trends going around our district. We also talked about our long-term enrollment projections for the district. We had an update on early literacy K-5 material implementation, and then we conducted a discussion on the Earn Honors implementation proposal. Our next meeting will be January 9th, where we will have another health services update. We'll talk about our special education plan. We'll talk about our summer learning and acceleration strategies, such as MSCR, summer semester, things of that nature. And then finally, we will hear a recommendation from the ad hoc committee to rename Jefferson Middle School.
Thank you, Board Member Castro. Board Member Gomez-Schmidt, we did not have an operating work group, but you are going to give us a little bit of a preview for what we can anticipate in January and the conversation we'll have tonight about the audit.
Yes, our next meeting will be held on January 23rd. Topics that are currently on the agenda, the start of the 2023-24 budget development process, so that we will get our first look at the budget for the upcoming year. Second on the agenda will be an update from Building Services on the transportation request for proposal process that we have been moving through for the 23-24 school year. And we should be hearing information about the finalists of those proposals that have been submitted to the district. We will receive an update on partnerships, and then we will also be looking at a few of the policies that have been on our list for a few meetings. And I'll get you an updated list of those as we work through that.
Board Member Castro, we will move on to action items that proceeded through the instruction work group. Board Member Vandermeulen is participating by phone.
That sounds good. So we have a motion here, 8.1. I move to approve the implementation of earned honors for 9th grade scholars in all core classes for the class of 2027 and the sunsetting of standalone honors for 9th grade scholars beginning with the start of the 23-24 school year to raise grade level expectations and provide universal opportunities for 4K through 12. The start of discussion.
I second that
and
for
then-
this. I second that for the sake of discussion.
And then how will I know that Board Member Vandermeulen has their hand raised? I'd like to provide comment.
So if Board Member Vandermeulen wants to participate in the conversation, she is participating via phone, and she'll have to inform me and Board Member Pearson. We'll add her to the deck.
Okay, sounds good.
So you've seconded the motion and opened it up for discussion, Board Member Castro?
A second from Board Member Pearson.
All right. I'd like to participate via the conversation, and I'd like to propose an amendment to the motion you just read. I move that the Board of Education approve recommendation 1 of universal honors implementation proposed to implement earned honors in all 9th grade core courses, English, math, science, and social studies for 2023-2024 school year. I have a second from Board Member Vandermeulen. I also move that the Board of Education approve. Okay. I'm sorry, Nikki, I have 2 amendments to the motion. We would have to vote on the first amendment vote on the first amendment or discuss the first amendment. And then I would read the second amendment. So I'll call a roll call vote for the first amendment if there's no discussion of the amendment. Is there any discussion? Board Member Pearson?
So I have a point of order. Typically, when there is an amendment that is being made to the original, those that made the original amendment must accept your amendment, just from my understanding. But if Sherry is online, just to give us the more procedural response of how we then deal with that.
I believe the board chair did make the appropriate amendment. And because the amendment is what is on the floor and it was second, we have to vote on the amendment and then go back and vote on the initial motion. And then I believe she has a second.
Nope, you haven't missed anything. Sherry is explaining a point of order about whether or not Savian or Board Member Castro needs to accept the amendment that was seconded by you and I, or that was proposed by me and seconded by you.
So just one other question about just procedural. Should both amendments be added to this amendment that is being made? To split, I think what is happening is that there's a wanting to split both of these items into two separate motions. So should it be, or should we be voting on one of the requests and then the second? Because then that will then make us go all the way back to the first one to vote. And so it almost becomes somewhat convoluted.
Yes, I guess it depends on what the second part is, because it could be read as one. But otherwise, if the board chair wants to proceed with two amendments, you'll still have to do the two and go back to the one. So it's her amendment. So I guess we'd have to hear it.
My preference is to do it as two motions and to have folks vote on each motion.
Just one other question, then where does the discussion of these motions live?
So it's been seconded for the first motion or amendment. So this would be the point where you would have the discussion on the first part.
Okay.
Because she didn't do both at the same time. So because she wants to break it up into two different amendments, it's a little different, but the best way to do it is to break it up in two and have the discussion.
Okay, so there's no accepting of the original motion goer to request, that they accept any kind of motion on that.
So the original motion then would be put on the floor at the very end.
Okay.
I mean, it's the same as we do. It's just this one is a little different because there are two amendments instead of one amendment for the whole motion.
And then just one last question. If these two emotions, for instance, pass, then does that automatically shoot down the first, the original motion?
You still have to vote on it. It's on the table still.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. So I've been asked to read the motion again, Board Member Vandermeulen. So I'll read it again, but I don't necessarily need anyone to second because it's already on the floor. I move that the Board of Education approve recommendation 1 of universal honors implementation proposed to implement earned honors in all 9th grade core courses in English, math, science, and social studies for the 2023-2024 school year. Thank you for seconding again, Board Member Vandermeulen. The motion is now on the floor and open for discussion. If there's no discussion, I'll call a vote. Board Member Pearson. Yes.
So my question is just, how does this affect the change in the proposal that has already been made? Or are we just restating what the proposal is already being put in place?
The purpose of the amendment is to separate what is the expansion of earned honors versus what is the sunsetting or elimination of standalone honors.
So splitting the two. Okay.
So
okay, then
were you to vote in favor of this motion, what you would be voting for is the expansion of earned honors at all 4 comprehensive high schools in all core curricular areas.
Got it. Thank you.
Further discussion? Joanna, your advisory vote.
Yes, I vote to approve this motion.
I'll do a roll call vote. Board Member Castro. Board Member Castro, did you say aye?
Aye.
Board Member Gomez-Schmidt.
Aye.
Board Member Pearson.
Aye.
Board Member Muldrow, aye. Board Member Nichols,
Aye.
Board Member Simkin, Board Member Vandermeulen. I tried to hold you up to the mic, but that motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Mike, do you mind actually holding Nikki for a sec? Thank you. Okay. The motion carries 7-0. I'll now move to the second part of my amendment. I move the Board of Education approve the recommendation 2 of the Universal Earned Honors implementation. I move that the Board of Education approve the recommendation 2 of Universal Earned Honors implementation proposal to sunset standalone honors courses starting in 9th grade for the 2023-2024 school year.
I second.
Any discussion? Board Member Gomez-Schmidt.
Yeah, thank you. It seems like there's a little confusion over this, but I just want to thank you for separating the two options. I'm voting tonight to, obviously we already voted to approve the expansion of the earned honors piece of this. Very important for expanding access to honors options as students enter high school. But I believe it doesn't have to be an either or. So I appreciate separating this so that we can vote on the actual standalone honors part 2. And I believe that keeping these side by side is going to allow us to figure out ways to increase access and preparation for students to both options of honors and really figure out how we are going to address disparities at the K-8 level to prepare more students to access these options.
Thank you, Board Member Gomez-Schmidt. Further discussion? Joanna.
Okay, this is going to be kind of long, so please bear with me, everyone. So, as for you guys who may not know me out there, I'm the student representative this year. I attend La Follette High School. I'm actually a senior there. So, as student representative, it is my responsibility to be representing the whole student body of all 4 comprehensive high schools, plus the 2 alternative high schools in MMSD. Today, I will not be stating my own opinion on this topic, rather the opinions that I've gathered throughout the student body as a whole. So in order to gain a larger variety of student voice, I decided to create a survey on this topic. I'd firstly like to thank Ms. Green and Mr. Harvey for how proactive they were when I presented the idea of getting my survey pushed out to the 4 comprehensive high schools in our district. With their help, my survey about the earned honors versus standalone honors discourse got approved and was sent out to all 4 comprehensive high schools, and I got a lot of responses. So before I begin presenting the data from the survey, I just like to make one point extremely clear. No matter what you do with the survey, it's going to be biased. No matter who you survey, how you do it, it's just going to be biased implicitly. Okay. There were 593 responses on my survey when I asked the question, do you want to keep standalone honors? 81.5% said yes, while 18.5% responded with no. I just like to make it clear that most of the students who responded to this survey were Caucasian or identified as white. When I asked the question, do you want to earned honors to replace standalone honors completely? 21% said yes, while 79.9% said no. When I asked the question about, do you want both earned and standalone honors to be implemented? 67.8% responded with yes, while 32.2% said no. 92.1% of the students who respond to my survey have taken an honors course before. Some of the notable quotes that came up from the survey were, what's there to elaborate? I'm a brown autistic student, male. Even if I did go into honors course, do you really think that I stand a chance in there? That's like putting an orphan in a family photo I wouldn't fit in. And that was a very strong quote from the survey that I received. I also got a quote about, my standard classes had way more diverse racial makeup. My honors classes were mostly white and Asian. Out of the 4 honors classes, I have 1 Black classmate. I truly feel no difference in academic vigor between courses, between honors classes and standard classes. I have not experienced an academic benefit from taking honors classes except for the AP world, but I don't know if AP classes count. Getting rid of honors classes would allow for a more diverse environment. In elementary, there are ways to be 3 different word problems of 3 different levels to solve. Students could pick out which one they found to be the best for them, and this created challenge by voice. It also allowed for students to get to work with kids who they felt were at different academic levels. Getting rid of honors courses would definitely be a way to create more diverse learning for environments. So on top of that, of the survey, to reduce the amount of bias I received on there, I spoke with my Black Student Union, which I'm the president of. I also spoke with Student Senate with Lavinia, and I also spoke with some of my teachers. At Student Senate, it was agreed that these inequities do start in kindergarten. However, it was brought up that we do have advanced learning programs. It was so disheartening to hear how many students in Student Senate had been discouraged from taking advanced classes in elementary schools and were basically told that they were too dumb to be taking it. The only reason why they were able to participate in those advanced learners program was because they had parents who fully advocated for them. This discouragement only magnifies as a student enters into their high school career. It doesn't only apply to discouragement to taking honors courses, but AP courses, UW courses, and even what colleges you can apply to or what you're smart enough to apply to. It was also brought up that yes, these inequities do begin at kindergarten, but if we only start with kindergarten right now, these inequities in our district will progress for the next 12 years. For my Black Student Union, most did not oppose to expanding earned honors. On the other hand, they did oppose to removing standalone honors as of right now. The teachers who I've spoken with have expressed their concern with the realistic implementation of earned honors without standalone honors being a thing anymore. They're not sure how they themselves as one teacher would be able to cater to everyone's need in all their classes. They're also concerned with how overworked they'll become. So I do have a few questions right now. Will teachers be receiving a raise if in pay if standalone honors were to be sunsetted completely and they would have to do earned honors? Can be answered or no?
So I'll speak to that question and just say that as far as I know, this proposal hasn't been connected to our budget thus far in the conversation. Dr. Jenkins, is there anything you'd like to say directly to whether or not teachers will be compensated additionally for any additional labor related to this transition?
Yes, it's much broader than this in terms of for earned honors, but you also have teachers who are bilingual, EAs who are bilingual. So as we're doing our compensation study, we're also looking at position analysis. So it's something for us to consider. It's not something necessarily to throw out in this, but I think there are other things other than just this. As you said, there become biases in everything that you do. So I appreciate you bringing it up to us for something else to consider.
Yeah, thank you. And then my second question I had from all the input that I've gathered is how will teachers be supported with having to teach students of all levels in one class if standalone honors were removed? This is just like from students' perspectives.
Are you directing the question around support specifically at Dr. Jenkins?
I'm sorry, I don't really know who I'm directing it to. Just
That's
can
okay. I
answer
can
it.
take it.
Okay,
I can take it. Yes, most definitely. We're going to support our staff as we do with continuous professional development. But it's not new. A number of teachers go through differentiation of instruction, teaching, and this will definitely, with anything new, there will be some change pains that we all are going to experience, and there have to be investments to ensure that they have the appropriate support, but students are going to need support too. There will be things from student level and a staff level. We started talking about just the psychological support that we would have to do in maintaining that whole social-emotional well-being for everybody. So it's just a part of the change process.
Okay, thank you. And that's all I want to present to you is the student input that I've gathered from all my clubs, plus the survey, and from teachers.
Joanna, I want to say I'm deeply inspired and impressed by your research and the work that you've put into representing the student body here tonight. So thank you so much for bringing that information to the table and for asking very thoughtful questions in terms of the impact this will have on our educators. Board Member Simkin, and then I see Board Member Nichols.
Thank you. I will be voting tonight to maintain our honors classes within our school. And saying that, I also want to say that in the course of this conversation, throughout the last few months, it has become, what?
Nikki wants you to be louder.
Okay, I'll try. It's become really clear that we still have a lot of work to do within those spaces. And I think that it is critical that if we maintain our standalone, if we maintain,
You got it.
I got it now?
Yeah, yes.
If we maintain our standalone honor spaces, we need to make sure that they are welcoming for every single student in our school, in our schools, just like every other class should be welcoming for every student in our school. We still, it feels like from what I've been hearing, we have 20, 30, 40 years of precedent here of having spaces that are considered unwelcoming to our students of color, and that's unacceptable. And to me, that doesn't mean that we remove all of our spaces, but that we address that. And so I'm just want to call upon all of us to do that. I know that there has been tremendous progress already made in the last 5 years, and we're up to almost half of the classes of our students of color, which is still lower than the population in our schools. But I truly believe that it is our responsibility to offer these spaces because they offer an appropriate education for students who want to go faster and deeper into subjects. And at the same time, we need to press on with making sure that every classroom is a welcoming environment. And I will leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Simkin. Board Member Nichols.
Yes, thank you. I want to state that I will be voting to support the sunsetting of 9th grade standalone courses beginning next year. And I'd like to just share a few of my reasons why. I'm not sure if my board colleagues know this, but 1 decade ago in the 2012-2013 school year, MMSD formed a group called the High School Reform Collaborative. This group had community partners, staff, students, and parents, and was probably about 50 folks committed, coming month after month. And when that group started, I was actually working at the Boys and Girls Club of Dane County, and I was a parent of 4 Black sons in this school district, with 2 of them in high school. And I had directly experienced the reality that our high schools were not actually meeting the needs of my sons and many of their friends. And I desperately wanted to see change. The whole goal of that group was to radically imagine how our high schools could change the trajectory for our students, providing them with more opportunities to actualize one of our strategic goals, that every student will graduate college, career, and community ready. Now, growing out of that high school reform collaborative are things that we still see in play today. The MMSD vision of a graduate, where we were describing the knowledge, skills, and dispositions that we want to see from every single student who leaves our district. MMSD conducted an audit of high school courses to better ensure that there was consistency in our course offerings across our 4 comprehensive high schools. There was a transformation of our alternative education spaces, moving from a handful of smaller programs into the Capital High School we now know today. It was the birth of pathways that came out of that high school reform collaborative and other examples of early college opportunities like the Early College STEM Academy. Now, I say all that to say the work to transform our high schools into more equitable hubs of learning and opportunity for every single one of our students began a decade ago and probably before that. And I feel like this is the next evolution in our journey. We know that our high schools are working very well for some of our students and families, and that is something to applaud. I'm not demonizing parents who are getting the best opportunities out of our public schools. In fact, we should be proud of some of the brightest students that we saw as we witnessed our National Merit Scholar semifinalists tonight. The irony is that we must also recognize that we're the same district that still has the lowest graduation rates for our African-American students and absolutely despicable, sometimes single-digit proficiency in literacy and math. Do I think that expanding earned honors or sunsetting standalone honors is going to resolve all of that? I don't. I know there is significant work that needs to happen K-8. However, I do believe that for the students and families who depend on us to help create more opportunities for them, we have to increase universal access to the highest quality education where we can. Lastly, in the pursuit of making education more equitable, I believe we should be striving to eliminate the predictability of student outcomes by race, not upholding the programs, policies, and practices that actually make our outcomes very predictable. We should recognize that in the pursuit to achieve equity in our public schools, it means that we have to create more accessibility, more inclusiveness, and not just maintain exclusivity in our public schools. What we call rigorous, accelerated education should not be taught down the hall behind closed doors only for some students. We should be holding a standard that all of our students deserve the opportunity to discover and develop their brilliance, their capabilities by being exposed to rigorous and challenging education in all of their classes. And I know in this conversation of equity, there will always be some who will feel like they are losing something. I know that all parents want the best for their children. No one wants their children to get less in their public schools. So I do want to say this to our families. If you have children who are fast learners, who excel by being challenged, and who crave the academic push, I believe your children will still get that in MMSD. I believe your children can experience that push and challenge and earned honors. Your children will still have access to advanced placement courses and other early college opportunities. Your children can still pursue taking college level courses while in high school and earning dual credit. For children and families who want to be as competitive as possible in the college admissions process, I actually think the conversation we should be having is how to expand as many AP courses as possible for your children rather than just hanging on the standalone honors. As Bell Hooks said, which is my t-shirt tonight, to be truly visionary, we have to root our imagination in our concrete reality while simultaneously imagining possibilities beyond that reality. I want to remind everybody that 10 years ago, the ACT exam was not a universal exam for all 11th graders. It was an opt-in exam for families who could afford to have their children take it. And 10 years ago, we wouldn't have imagined that our state would move the ACT so that every single 11th grader could take it. So I say that to say, sometimes we can't see what we can't see, but we have to hold space to radically imagine the transformation. So I'm voting to support the sunsetting of the standalone honors, and I'm very proud of our board tonight for voting to support the expansion of the universal earned honors. You can tell I prepared my thoughts tonight. Thank you.
Board Member Castro.
Thank you, Board Member Nichols. I will be voting in support of this motion to eliminate or sunset standalone honors. First of all, I want to speak from experience. I know what it's like to be challenged academically and intellectually, and I know what it's like to experience the bigotry of low expectations. I was told I'm slow because I have a stutter. I felt the euphoria of being underestimated and beat those expectations because of this arbitrary system of who is worthy of honors and who is not worthy of honors. Education is a social enterprise. When we think of what is advanced and honorable, it's constructed. Historically, those constructs have devalued the education and intelligence and contributions from students of historically marginalized backgrounds. Eliminating standalone honors will not eliminate those constructs wholesale, but it is a piece of such effort. Nationally, and certainly here in MMSD, educators in standalone honors and AP courses are typically more veteran, have more advanced degrees, and have less turnover in their schools. this is an instance of opportunity hoarding. I do appreciate the efforts to eliminate these constructs in the honors program, but the fact of scarcity and limited opportunities are inherent within the confines of a segregated system, because by definition, there is a scarce, limited number of seats in these courses. Moreover, when some students are seen as worthy of honors and maybe some not in these classes, there are, in my opinion, clear limits to social change within these classrooms because of this fact. There's also a respectable body of research that shows when students of real mixed levels are together, everyone learns better. And finally, I want all of our students to pursue their passions and gifts and interests. And we have to look beyond what I believe to be an equitable, antiquated system. Most colleges and universities don't typically weigh college courses in their admissions, nor do these honors courses provide any professional license or internship. So I agree that it's way more broad than this one vote. And I know that all members of this board will work towards that vision. I'm looking forward to investing and cultivating the extra curriculars we offer. I was a proud member of Debate Club, partnerships with colleges and universities, and internships to look at this situation more broadly. So thank you for the opportunity to explain my vote, and that is it.
Board Member Vandermeulen has asked that we call the question and vote, and Board Member Pearson would like to add to the discussion.
Yes. So I'll just keep my comments kind of brief because I know Nikki would like to vote, but you know.
I'm sorry, Board Member Vandermeulen.
So I would just like to say that with these conversations that we've been having for a while now, rigor should not be synonymous with honors. Rigor and high expectations should exist in all of our classes and should be accessible to all of our children. So I will be voting and supporting to sunset standalone honors. And I know that in the last meeting, you know, I mentioned my own personal experience and some experiences of others that were around me. But I think what Nichelle and Savian have mentioned, and with questions that I received from a UW assistant professor, is, do we truly believe that all of our children are brilliant? Do we believe in the brilliance of all of our children? What would it mean to act on such a belief? Who do we believe has relevant knowledge and expertise for making decisions about our children's options in their educational system? What does it mean to act on those beliefs? And I say those questions because I think she wanted to be here tonight to also come and give public comment, but was unable to. But when I got those questions, I started really thinking deep about that. Like, who do we believe are brilliant, right? And I think it goes into part of the conversation of some of the emails that we've been getting and some of the conversations that I've been hearing is, oh, we have to have our children prepared for college. And I just want to bring it back to something that I don't think that we've necessarily discussed much about, is college acceptance. How do folks who are accepting students into college look at honors courses, and does it give children a leg up in taking those college courses? So I've had some conversations with admissions folks at various universities and also professors at various universities. And what they said was, and this is just a summary of some of the conversation, is that when admitting students into the universities and college, there's not necessarily an understanding as to what to attribute honors courses to. So does it actually, because what ends up happening is that honors courses are not implemented the same across the nation. And so there's not a good baseline to tell if a child took honors calculus, if they actually understand calculus, right? That goes into then having to take placement tests and other kind of I guess, testing to make sure that the child knows or the student knows what their work is, how to connect the two. And I think it goes back to what Nichelle had mentioned about once we, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. But I think it goes back to the quality of also having high quality teaching, having high quality classes for all the students, and ensuring that at the end of the day, the students who are independent on schooling, so those students who schooling is their primary source of education, not tutoring after school, not because their parents were, you know, maybe college graduates and could help them with calculus, as we've heard some folks be able to talk about. But schooling at the school is their primary focus, is their primary vehicle of education. We should make sure that that is rigorous for them and that we also see their brilliance and that we can actually make sure that they can learn from each other and that we can make the best schools possible. So I had a train of thought about the admissions, but we'll move on because.
Joanna?
Yeah, so I'm just gonna keep this really brief, but I do appreciate the fact that board member Nichols brought up the fact that we should be focusing on expanding AP courses because at La Follette High School, we don't even have an AP government course. I had to take it online last year, which is Memorial offers it. I'm pretty sure West does, so does East. So that's a very intriguing issue to me. Also, thank you, board member Pearson, to talking to admissions counselors, because I know that's like a huge, the whole thing with standalone honors has been, are we getting our students college ready? Like, how is this going to affect their college acceptance rates? So that's like a very, thank you for doing that. And then also, this is not my personal opinion now. I'm just going to be saying why I'm going to vote the way I'm voting. So based on the way that I've talked to students and the survey responses, plus Student Senate, Black Student Union, teachers that I've talked to, I'll be voting to not remove standalone honors as of right now. However, if I do receive more support from students like later year, then that could be a vote. But yeah, that's the way I'm gonna be voting today.
Thank you, Joanna. I'm going to add myself to the deck. I'll explain my vote. I believe that every child deserves strength-based, differentiated learning. I think the fact that we just voted for universal earned honors across the district is an incredible opportunity for us to offer rigor to a diverse group of young people. I also think that we create the achievement gap in elementary school. And so if we want to have this conversation about what prepares a student for honors or rigor or to be successful in high school, we have to have a conversation about what we're doing in middle school and elementary school. That includes conversations around our DLI programs and who is and isn't allowed to have access to those opportunities. The conversation we're having tonight is broad and has an incredible level of depth. And there's a tremendous amount of work we will need to do no matter how this vote turns out. I am voting against the elimination of standalone honors. I'm voting against the elimination of standalone honors at this time because I think that this is a decision we need to make as a community and we need to be prepared for in a way that allows for all of us to work together. The other thing I want to acknowledge is that this weekend I was incredibly fortunate and got to talk to some of the wrestlers from La Follette about what earned honors actually looks like in the classroom. And what they emphasized was an assessment they get upon completing the class, an additional work that they can do on that assessment. They did not emphasize rigor throughout the course or additional work throughout the course. I do think that we need to examine closely what we're calling honors and earned honors. And I agree wholeheartedly with board member Nichols in terms of the need we have to expand opportunities in advanced placement courses. I think that when we talk about this gap, we often racialize this gap. And I think it's a really important thing to do because there is a history of leaving students of color out of these opportunities. But there's also a gender gap when we look at mathematics and a series of other gaps and indicators of who we will recognize as advanced. The other thing I want to acknowledge, because in every conversation we have about what it means to be talented and gifted or an advanced learner, I have asked our administration, what are we doing if you're advanced in the area of dance or performance art? And I often get a variety of blank stare as the response. I think that we need to have an expansive conversation about what it means to be talented and gifted, what it means to be an advanced learner, what it means to take honors in our district. but I wholeheartedly believe every single child benefits from strength-based differentiated learning, and that part of what we're doing tonight in expanding Earn Honors is embracing that. I see Board Member Pearson, and then I'm going to call the question.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention my train of thought at the end. Sorry, it's just really quick, was to the AP part of just what Nichelle mentioned, that AP should be expanded, and that was what some of the admissions folks were saying. If children really wanted to have that that AP credit for college.
Thank you, Board Member Pearson. I'm going to do a roll call vote, and I'm going to start with Board Member Vandermeulen. Board Member Vandermeulen, how do you want to vote on whether or not to eliminate standalone honors? If you vote in favor of this motion, you are voting to eliminate standalone honors. If you vote against it, you are voting to maintain standalone honors. Board Member Vandermeulen, I've recorded your vote as to maintain standalone honors. You're voting against the motion. Board Member Castro?
Aye.
Board Member Gomez-Schmidt?
Nay.
Board Member Pearson?
Aye.
Board Member Muldrow? Nay. Board Member Nichols?
Aye.
Board Member Simpkin?
Nay.
Yana, your advisory vote?
Nay.
The motion fails 4-3.
So now we have to go back to the next.
We'll return to the original motion, which was moved by Board Member Castro. Board Member Castro, would you like to bring us forward in a discussion of the original motion or bring us to a vote on that motion?
So real quick, Sherry, how did those two amendments affect the original motion?
Essentially, it changed the end of the original motion. The original motion was to end standalone honors, but for the ninth grade, starting at the 9th and 10th grade for the 23-24 school year. And so it took that part and changed it to maintaining standalone honors.
Okay, so would the theoretical motion be, I move to approve the implementation of earned honors for ninth grade scholars in all core classes for the class of 2027 to raise grade level expectations and provide universal opportunities for 4K through 12?
Yes, because we are maintaining the status quo, which is what we already have.
Okay, so I'm going to read the now amended motion. I move to approve the implementation of earned honors for ninth grade scholars in all core classes for the class of 2027 to raise grade level expectations and provide universal opportunities for 4K through 12.
Do we need another second, Sherry? Because I seconded the original motion.
Any discussion?
Board Member Gomez-Schmidt?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify because it seems like we already voted on two motions that I assumed were replacement motions for the one that we had on the floor. Yeah, I'm just not sure what to do with this motion because we've already voted to move forward with the earned part and to maintain the standalone part.
Right, but if they were presented as amendments to this original motion.
So I could explain that I plan to vote against the original motion because I voted in favor of the two amendments that altered this motion.
So then this motion is altered to what we voted on through the amendment process, right? Like this is the final motion, the result of our two amendments.
Are you asking that to Sherry? Ayo, Sherry,
Oh, I didn't hear him say.
can you clarify?
So yeah, so I think what Board Member Castro was attempting to do was make it one unified motion. To make it easier, we can just vote on the original motion, but then vote
I'm sorry, you're going
to
in
the
and out.
second would vote, right, would vote, my connection is really, would vote to accept the original motion, because that was that was their vote with the two amendments.
If they were amendments, what were they amending?
The original motion.
Okay.
That's what usually
And so-
you get one. It's a combined motion. So if it had been a combined motion, you would have done the vote on the combined motion, and then you would have done the vote to get rid of the original motion, which is still on the table.
So if we vote down this motion, our amendment still stand?
Yes.
Okay. I move to approve the implementation of earned honors for ninth grade scholars and all core classes for the class of 2027, and the sunsetting of standalone honors for ninth grade scholars beginning with the start of the 23-24 school year to raise grade level expectations and provide universal opportunities for 4K through 12.
The original motion, I second it.
Okay. Any discussion? All right. Board Member Gomes-Schmidt?
Yeah, I would just really like to clarify that whichever way we vote is it either confirming the actual motion that was on the floor. I mean, I would prefer to have something reread that includes those amendments that we just passed if we are doing it in that form. If they're replacement amendments, I would be comfortable. I don't even think we need to vote on this one. If they were replacement amendments, or replacement resolutions or motions. If they were taken.
I did not interpret those as a replacement. I interpreted those as amending this original motion. And so the first time my first reading was the result of those amendments. It eliminated the eliminate standalone honors line.
Okay. Could we maybe?
But then I was told to reread the original motion. So I'm not sure the person who proposed the amendments, how did you intend for them to affect the original motion?
So they would act as a replacement, although they affirm the first motion affirms a portion of the motion anyway. So there's a singular area in which my amendment is different than the original motion. I can't vote to confirm the original motion because I amended it to say this is what I think should be different about it.
Right. So we amended it. And so then what does the final amendment motion read like?
Board Member Castro, what I think the way I read it was the first time you came back, you had replaced the language. So you basically read, I move to approve the implementation of earned honors for ninth grade scholars and all core classes for the class of 2027. Then you did a strike on the sunsetting of standalone honors because that's the part of the language that failed in our previous vote. And then you picked it back up to raise grade level expectations and provide universal opportunities for K-12. So it seems like that is the new amended main motion.
Was the result of our amendments.
Okay.
So I think there was some language around actually breaking down where it says all core classes. There was actually a mention more specifically. So does that need to
Could
be
someone provide me
within-
with the original amendment language?
I move that the Board of Education approve recommendation 2 of the Universal Earned Honors Implementation Proposal to sunset standalone honors courses starting in 9th grade for the 2023-2024 school year. That's the second. The first is I move that the Board of Education approve recommendation number 1 of the Universal Honors Implementation Proposal to implement earned honors in all 9th grade core courses in English, math, science, and social studies for 2023 and 2024.
And that passed unanimously.
Board Member Castro, can I just suggest something here? I think part of the problem with putting these together, again, to vote on them, is that one is affirmative and the other is negative, or the opposite way around. And so to vote on them together, unless you replace the word sunset with maintain, I think that's the only way that you can put them together and have that work based on the way we voted on the amendment.
I would
that-
say
His original response removed that sunsetting part.
Okay.
There was no mention of standalone at all.
So I would say that there's a variety of ways and language that we could use to talk about what just happened, right? We could call it universal options for honors with 2 separate ways of accessing honors, right? Voting in the affirm of having 2 ways of getting to honors coursework. I think there's a lot of ways we can talk about the motion we just passed, but I do think the motion we just passed contradicts the motion that was originally put forward. So were you to
What we just passed was an amendment to the original.
I'm sorry,
motion.
Board Member Castro. Did you want to explain it to me?
I am explaining my confusion in that we passed an amendment to the original motion.
So I think we can just use the language because the legality, from my understanding of Robert's rules, we moved the motion that was specific to what Ali mentioned, the amendment that she mentioned. And I think that then would become the replacement of our motion here on the floor because the second part did get shot down, which I think goes back in play to your original statement or your original motion. Oh, can no one hear me? Oh. So it goes back to the original motion that Savian, you mentioned that does not include sunsetting standalone honors. So I think it's just getting him the language so he can reread it and we can be done. But correct me if I'm wrong, Sherry. This is why I asked all those questions at the beginning. Sherry, are you with us?
Yes.
Is it correct in my assumption that the motion that we had as the affirmative amendment would replace what the original amendment was because it did not have that second part of sunsetting standalone?
I think the most not complicated way to do this is that the motion would be I move to replace the original motion and then read both amendments and you vote. Because you're with the amendments as read by Chair Muldrow.
All right.
Because essentially what you did was replace the original motion because as she said, it's 2 parts. One part was in the affirmative and one part was in the negative. And it's not going to be a clean record unless that's reflected as the main motion.
Okay, so I would move to replace the main motion with these 2 motions.
Yes, and you could initially when you said and further, so you can add in the and further for the second part of the motion. So you
Okay.
can add them and have one motion.
I move that the Board of Education approve recommendation 1 of Universal Honors Implementation Proposal to implement, I move to replace the original motion. I move that the Board of Education approve recommendation 1 of the Universal Honors Implementation Proposal to implement earned honors in all 9th grade core courses in English, math, science, social studies, and for the 2023-2024 school year. Furthermore, I move that the Board of Education not approve the second recommendation of the Universal Earned Honors Implementation Proposal to sunset standalone honors courses starting in 9th grade for the 2023-2024 school year. Joanna, your advisory vote.
I.
Oh, I'm sorry. I need a second.
Second that.
Second, Board Member Nichols. Joanna, your advisory vote.
I.
Board Member Simkin.
Aye.
Board Member Nichols.
Aye.
Board Member Muldrow. Aye. Board Member Pearson.
Nay.
Board Member Castro.
Nay.
Board Member Gomez Schmidt.
Aye.
Motion carries. Nikki's off. No, we voted to replace the motion, so that motion is gone. We replaced it with a different motion. So that's the I move to replace the original motion. I know. Okay. I move that the Board of Education adopt and approve all of the motions set forth in Section 10 of the electronic agenda prepared for the December 19th, 2022 regular school board meeting, exactly as said motions are written. By voting affirmatively on this motion, a board member expresses his, her, or their affirmative vote on each of the motions consolidated hereby, subject to any express separations that have been made by any member of the school board.
Second.
Any separations? Board Member Pearson?
10.6.
Any other separations? Joanna, your advisory vote?
I.
All those in favor? Aye. Board Member Castro, did you vote affirmative? Okay. Motion carries 6. I move that the Board of Education approve the expenditure in the amount of $102,250 for the Cultural Vista recruitment and screening service for up to 25 international bilingual teachers using funds from the fiscal year 2023 multilingual program / state and federal ESSER 3 budget.
Second.
Any discussion? Board Member Pearson?
Yeah, I just pulled this one to say that when we were being briefed on this this item, I was really glad to see that we are looking internationally in hiring for language and more bilingual teachers throughout our schools. I guess my only question is, are we looking to only getting bilingual teachers and just like the actual language classes, or is it going to be multilingual classes and, you know, like English or not English, like math or biology or something like that, like sciences?
Well, just quite frankly, in our recruiting, we're trying to recruit teachers, right? And definitely this is going to be a big thing for us in terms of being able to get our bilingual teachers to be able to teach across the board. As we know, when we run across some can teach more than just the language itself. They are too certified in mathematics or other fields too, science.
And then also, are we utilizing this as an equity strategy to ensure that we are focusing on Black and Brown teachers from different diverse areas?
Yes, this is most definitely a part of our equity strategy and also a part of our excellence strategy. We know the more diverse that we can have in our workforce and exposing our students in our community to individuals who are just coming from around the world, the better it's going to be for us as a community.
Yeah, I support this 100%. And I just ask these questions because I think it's important to recognize that when we are looking to get teachers from other areas, ensuring that it's from a diverse, like South America, Africa, looking at, Asia and not always sometimes Europe to get folks coming in. So that's the reason why I'm excited about this.
Thanks for asking those questions, particularly, understanding the Europe experience that we've had in the past, not only just in this district, but in the U.S. We found that it's best for us to get natives who can speak to from other countries. So thank you.
Board Member Pearson, I greatly appreciate your questions. I know that staffing our bilingual positions is one of our more challenging positions to staff at this time and has been actually for a significant period of time. Dr. Jenkins, I want to ask you, or possibly our director of HR, how many bilingual positions, bilingual resource teachers or bilingual specialists or Spanish teachers or dual language immersion teachers how many vacancies do we currently have within the realm of teachers that we're looking for via kind of this international search?
I'm going to have our HR speak to that right now as she's coming up. She's still, Ms. Carradine? Yeah, she's here. And as she's coming up, I'll tell you, we were at like about 35 thinking that, but as we're going out and we're recruiting, we're looking to overstaff. And right now with the current national steel staffing shortages, as we go out, we're looking to, as much as we can, grab great teachers when we see great teachers. And so if we come back having overstaffed, it'll probably put us near an appropriate space come time for opening up in the fall.
Thank you.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
So you were asking the question about bilingual positions. So BRT or DLI, we have 10 positions that are open currently right now. So looking at that, so we are in the process, and I think Cindy, if you can help me answer this question, the other piece is that we're looking at how many teachers that we're trying to hire through this program. This past year, we had 11 that went through the system so that we tested it. So now that we did the RFP, or I should say the RFQ, we have the same company coming up to do the same. So we're going to continue with them. But this time around, we're going to ask for more teachers, for them to do more recruiting. And when we used them this last time, we told them which areas we wanted to focus on. So as you said, Board Member Pearson, we're going to be looking at other areas and expanding it.
So much for speaking to that. And I greatly appreciate that this isn't just about filling our immediate vacancies, but really making sure we have a robust pool of folks who are meeting the needs of our English language learners and also providing world language access to our students. I would greatly appreciate if this work allowed for us to move away from having the current relationship we have with Pearson or a variety of platforms that we're using to compensate for our lack of ability to staff these roles. So thank you so much for this work, and thank you, Board Member Pearson, for pulling this item. Further discussion? Joanna, your advisory vote.
Aye.
All those in favor? Motion carries 6-0. We have no other business for this meeting. City of Madison Education Committee, Board Member Nichols.
Yes, at our December 14th City Education Committee, we were really fortunate to have two guests, Janet Dyer from MSCR and Christine Bergen from CISA 2, who came in to give us further information about driver's education and how students access not only the classroom component, but also behind the wheel. So the committee was very grateful for that. We briefly discussed other budget amendments that had gone forward at the city and county level. And we decided that we would continue our focus on driver's education as a primary focus for the committee moving forward. We discussed our 2023 schedule, and our next meeting is January 11th.
Thank you, Board Member Nichols. Johanna, reports from Student Senate, please.
So on our meeting on November 30th, I shared the Board of Education report. We also had two speakers from this, well, three speakers actually, from the school-based health centers discussion, which was really interesting to see how our district will be moving forward with equity within the medical field and how we can give physicals to students and stuff like that. Also on December 14th, we did a past meeting briefing. Then all we got to was just the Board of Education report. And we discussed about earned honors versus standalone honors, which took our whole time with Student Senate. And our next meeting will probably be January 11th, 2023 and January 25th of 2023. Thank you.
Thank you. Citizens Ad Hoc Committee to rename Jefferson Middle School. Dr. Angie Hicks.
Okay. Good evening, Board Chair and board members. The Citizens Ad Hoc Committee to rename Jefferson Middle School held the final meeting on Tuesday, December 6th. This meeting included a public hearing, but there were no public appearances or witness statements submitted. The webpage feedback has been open the entire time that the committee has been meeting, and that feedback has been shared with the committee at each of their meetings. It is also posted in the board docs. The committee confirmed the 4 proposals for names they are recommending to the Board of Education. They are in alphabetical order by first name: Eston Hemming Jefferson, Ezekiel Gillespie, Maya Angelou, and Sally Hemmings. The committee voted to not rank these last 4 names, so they are listed in alphabetical order only. The renaming will now move to the Board of Education Instructions Work Group meeting on January 9th, 2023, the Operations Work Group on February 13th, 2023, with a final vote on February 27th, 2023, at the regular board meeting to be held in person and virtually at Jefferson Middle School.
Dr. Hicks, I want to ask about the function of the conversations we'll have in the work groups. So in the work groups, because we're being given 4 names, will we be using the work group space to eliminate down to 1 name so that we can vote on that name during the regular board meeting in February?
So my understanding is that in that space you have all of the information and all of the research, and so when you come there, you can you will have an opportunity to vote on changing down to 2, down to 1, but those are the 4 names that they wanted to come forward.
That conversation is structured and that information is structured, that there is some way to, I guess, engage the board in a conversation around how we're going to get to one name from the four names. And whether or not we're engaging the community in that process further, or whether or not individual board members are ranking those names in order for us to move forward and vote during the regular board meeting. Thank you, Dr. Hicks. And I'm sorry, unless you have additional questions for Dr. Hicks.
No, actually, I was just wanted to add to, during our briefings, this is what we were talking about when we had Barb come. We are going to allow for time, as Dr. Hicks said, in terms of for you to have a discussion during those meetings, because we also giving you information, background information, as Dr. Hicks said too. And then after that, as you stated, in the February meeting, we'll do the formal vote. So we'll narrow it down during those meetings.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. Safety and student ad hoc board member Gibson.
Yeah, so we had a meeting on December 15th. Unfortunately, I was not present due to some external issues. But we did have an update on our survey outreach. And on the 19th, which is today, I believe. Let me just check. I think it's today. For some reason, my brain. Yes, today. Was the survey is now closed. So we'll start to deliberate in our next meeting about the information that came from the survey. We also revised our recommendation grids to be a little more user-friendly and a little more understandable. And we'll start adding items to that grid as well. Our next meeting is, sorry, we haven't confirmed, I think, the next meeting dates. And then we'll also work on the proposed agendas. So it's just putting together the information so that we can come to the board with actual recommendations closer to budget time.
Thank you, Board Member Pearson. Policy Committee, either Board Member Gomez-Schmidt or Board Member Castro.
Thank you. The Policy Committee met last week, Friday, and we discussed our plans to start our initial board member interviews with Neola starting this January. And then we also discussed our intentions to discuss the following policies amongst the board, those being workplace harassment and bullying, open records policy, as well as anti-discrimination. And so we plan to meet in January and hopefully start our interview process with Neola amongst board members.
Thank you, Board Member Castro. Board Governance Committee, Board Member Simpkin or Board Member Nichols.
We did not meet since our last board meeting.
Thank you, Board Member Simpkin.
But we are preparing for the February retreat.
Thank you for preparing for the February retreat, and please let me and Board Member Pearson know how we can support you all in that portion of the retreat.
We will do that. Thank you.
Thanks, Board Member Simpkin. Thank you, Board Member Nichols. Moving on to other business. I'm sorry, Board Member Gomez-Schmidt, were you interested in talking us through the motion related to the Wisconsin Association of School Boards WASB proposed resolutions for January 18th, 2023 delegate assembly meeting?
Do you want to do the motion first and then have me and then discuss?
I'm sorry, I missed the motion actually. I move that the Board of Education direct Board Representative Chris Gomez-Schmidt to vote in approval of the Wisconsin Association of School Boards 2023 resolution items 23-1 to 23-19 at the January 2023 State Education Convention Delegates Assembly meeting.
Second.
Thank you. I just wanted to explain a little bit about what these are. At the state education conference every year, all of the one school board representative from every school district across the state has the opportunity to attend this delegate assembly and talk about these resolutions that come before WASB to either make a case or support them based on how your own school board votes. So there are basically 19 of these resolutions before us. They range on a lot of different topics, from the high cost transportation aid to career and technical education. And so I guess basically what I need to know is how you all want me to vote, representing MMSD on these issues. The way I've seen this happen before is that I would suggest that if there's any kind of like a consent, if there's any that we need to discuss and pull, let's do those. If we are in approval for the rest, we can be approval and we don't necessarily need to discuss each one unless you would like to go through them one by one.
Further discussion?
I know that there was some of the ones that you may want to just highlight that we should probably focus a little more on. I know that there was a little couple questions about some of them. So I think you have prepared some kind of questions that you may have.
First, does anybody have any questions or any that they want to pull in specific? I do have one or two that I would like to highlight.
Board Member Nichols.
I think though, the one that stood out to me, and I had mentioned this to you earlier, is Resolution 23-10, FORT requirements for educators, which is around foundations of reading test. I guess I don't know enough about that. The rest of the resolutions that I read, I would be in support of you voting to support as a delegate. I don't know how we proceed when we have a question about one of the resolutions.
Right. And so to clarify, the one you're asking about is the FORT requirement for educators. And this is basically, it says to create the WASB supports legislation to provide all teaching license applicants with an alternative pathway to licensure that does not require passage of the Foundations of Reading Test, or FORT. This one was one I had questions on also, because I'm not sure that I entirely understand what the alternatives to the licensure would be. And I know that they are doing some revisions of the Foundations of Reading Test. And I know that I think the revisions include an emphasis on the science of reading, and a new inclusion of that, which I think is important for our district, because we are very interested in having educators join us who understand the science of reading and are ready to help with that type of instruction. I guess what I don't know is I also would like a little bit more background on this licensing test. I don't know, is there anybody in our administration who can speak to that for us? It also seems like it's very much rooted in like pre-service teaching before the educators get to us. And so and I know it's a complex issue about the passage rates and access to getting a teaching license due to this, but is there anybody who can speak to this, or we can set this aside and get some more information for the board members before we vote on this one in particular?
Let us come back to you with a clear picture of where WASB is coming from, because the superintendents, we've been talking about this, and we know at DPI that they are too, beginning to focus on foundations in terms of the science of reading. We are already there. We're working with DPI as well. But in terms of why WASB took this particular position, I can't speak intelligently about that. So I'll ask my colleagues and we'll reach out to them and get back with you with a solid answer on why they took this position now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, Board Member Pearson.
I did have a question about the resolution 2303, the independent charter school funding. From what it says, it will create a sub-paragraph under existing resolution 3.21. The funding for charter schools not authorized by the local school board comes directly from the state and not from the aid deductions to the resident school district or first draw on school equalization aids. And so the rationale there, what it sounds like is that they will be moving from getting additional dollars
from just the equalization and have directly from the state. So does that mean that they're trying to, will it divvy up the funding for individual schools and charter schools? Or will we have access still to whatever monies that public schools are being afforded? I guess I'm not really clear as to why or what they're trying to do there.
As I understand it, instead of the charter school that is authorized by the state that is within your district, instead of that coming directly out of our funding and going to that school, it would come from state funding separately. So it wouldn't affect our like revenue limits and the amount that we have, you know, coming in.
Okay, thank you. That clarifies. Hopefully.
That was my understanding of it.
Okay, I was just making sure. Okay, that's the way you read it too. Okay, good.
Remember, Nichols, are you on, is your hand up for this? Okay, okay. Further discussion around WASB? Yes.
The only other one I wanted to highlight for us, and this again is not that we need to oppose this. This is one that I believe we should support. It's under universal free school meals. And it's about state supplemental funding sufficient to establish a universal free school meal program enabling all students, regardless of family income, to receive free school meals at all schools, regardless of participation in the federal school meals program. And there's a whole rationale that explains that and why it would be important. And I think that's something that is important for us to support.
Thank you, Board Member Gomez-Schmidt. Joanna, your advisory vote?
Aye.
Board Member Gomez-Schmidt.
So the motion on the floor is to approve all of them. I think we need to separate out that fourth one so that we can get more information on that before you approve it.
I agree with you. Do you want to read the motion separating out the ones that you would like separated out specifically?
Yes.
Thank you.
I move that the Board of Education direct Board Representative Chris Gomez-Schmidt, that is me, to vote in approval of the Wisconsin Association of School Boards 2023 resolutions, items 2301 to 2309 and 2311 to 2319 at the January 2023 State Education Convention Delegate Assembly meeting.
Second. Board Member Gomez-Schmidt, did you want to separate? Did you separate?
Yep,
I'm sorry. I apologize.
I just didn't include that in.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll bring that back in
Yes,
January.
thank you so much. Joanna, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All those in favor? Motion carries 6-0. All right, now we get to talk about the audit.
Hello. Let's see if we're on here. How are you? I was kind of dismayed to see that we were last, but now I'm realizing that we are going to wipe out 2022 with this audit and end this meeting and move on with 23. It'll be great. My name is Natalie Rue. I am the comptroller here at Madison Metropolitan School District. I am really pleased to tell you that we have gone through now another, as always, I have never known otherwise with Madison Metropolitan School District, and financial statement audit, which is unqualified, which means it is materially correct. In all material respects, and fairly in all material respects, the financial position of the district in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States. We have a really strong accounting team. I do not do this alone. There's 18 of us upstairs, and we had one journal entry at the end of the year proposed by the auditors, which is amazing when you start talking to other school districts, what happened out there. So our audit firm, Wifley, this is our second year with them. Rob Gonshaw is the partner in charge of this audit, and he is hopefully on Zoom with his presentation.
Thank you for giving me I'm assuming you can hear me, correct?
We can hear you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you giving me a few minutes here tonight. I'll try and get you home before the Packer game finishes up. So, as Natalie stated, you hire us to come in and go over the district's books. Obviously, we can't look at all of the transactions of the district. We look at those, we do a lot of sampling, and we look at transactions over what we consider a materiality threshold. And we also use analytical procedures as part of our audit, basically looking at relationships between numbers and non-financial statistics to make sure that they make sense. If your enrollment is increasing, are your state aids increasing, expenditures, all of that type of stuff. As Natalie also had alluded to, the audit opinion that we did provide on the financial statements as a whole was unmodified. What that means is, in all material respects, the financial statements are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. If you'll flip to the first slide for me. Communications with those charged with governance. That's the smallest of the 3 documents that we provide to you. It basically points out 8 different items that we're required to share with you as part of our professional responsibilities. The first item, qualitative aspects of accounting practices. Basically, what we discussed there is if any accounting policies or procedures changed from year over year. And as you'll see on the slide, GASB 87 was implemented this year. Basically, what that required the district to do was change how it accounts for its lease agreements. In the past, all you had really been recorded to report there was lease expense. Now, the district is required to record a right of use asset and a liability related to those leases. Essentially reporting them same way as you would have reported your capital leases in the past, which were treated as debt. The reason that you're required to do that is because you have the exclusive right to using that asset. So under the new accounting standard, they deem that to be just like you own that asset for the term of that lease. And therefore you record it on your books and you amortize it over the life of that lease. The main estimates that are included in your financial statements are related to your capital assets. The useful lives there are estimated, and depreciation expense is calculated and recorded in your financial statements over the life of those assets. Also, in addition to that, you have pension and OPEB liabilities and assets when it comes to the Wisconsin retirement system that are large estimates that are included in your financial statements. And the main reason that they're estimates is because they're supported by actuarial studies, and those actuarial studies are based on assumptions of future earnings on the assets that are set aside, as well as future increases in health insurance expenses, the number of employees that are going to retire with the district, and so on and so forth. We encountered no significant difficulties in performing our audit. Your staff was helpful and provided us information as we asked for it. I have identified here no corrected or uncorrected misstatements. The one misstatement that Natalie referred to, I view that as an item that we came to agreement on together. So I don't treat that as a misstatement personally. Disagreements with management, no significant or no disagreements with management, I would say. Management representations that Natalie and the finance team provided to us are attached to this thinner letter. To our knowledge, management did not reach out to any other auditors or independent accountants to get opinions on anything that would relate to the opinion that we provided on the financial statement. And other audit issues or other matters, we'll talk briefly, but we did find some internal control deficiencies regarding the student activity funds. If you'll flip to the next page for me. Overall, when we look at the internal control and the compliance, we feel that there's a positive control environment at the top. And when we brought issues up that we felt needed to be discussed or needed to be addressed, the management worked with us on those, understood the importance of them, and is committed to making sure that those issues are taken care of going forward. Management continues to place a high importance on implementing items such as cross-training and segregation of duties and making sure that there's adequate management oversight of transactions and the reporting process at the district. Two significant deficiencies that we did identify over the internal controls were related to receipts and disbursements at the student activity funds. Those are funds that are considered custodial funds at the individual districts because they are not used to support the day-to-day activities of the districts or of the district and the individual buildings. Those are actually funds that are generated and or donated to individual clubs to be used to support their ongoing activities. The items that we found were related to lack of documentation regarding receipts and disbursements. And there were also some issues regarding timely depositing of funds at banks and timely disbursement of funds related to invoices that had been received. In regards to federal and state non-compliance matters, we did have a number of items that we found this year. One of them was related to the education stabilization funding that the district received, and it was related to the Davis-Bacon Act, which specifically refers to contracting when you are doing construction with federal funds. The district had not followed the requirements regarding the Davis-Bacon Act as far as getting contractor payrolls prior to payment on invoices from the contractors. They were subsequently received later and checked to make sure that they were paying the prevailing wage rates. So ultimately, the work was done, but it was after the fact. Emergency Connectivity Fund. In regards to that, the devices that were received and paid for as a part of that funding were to be allocated and identified for individual students to be used outside of the classrooms. And we determined that there were a number of devices that were held back at individual classrooms to be used as replacement computers should devices go bad, and that's specifically not allowed under the funding. That has subsequently been taken care of by allocating those devices to individual students. And then for the state program, special education and school age parents, individual teachers that are charged to the 011 general ledger account at the district, those teachers are required to have appropriate licenses documented at the district, and those individuals are to be reported to the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction. Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction pulls a report during the year that cross-references individuals that are being reported as teaching special education grades and compares it to their licensing database to determine that those individuals are appropriately licensed. And when that report was generated by Department of Public Instruction, there were a number of individuals on what is called the no valid license listing. So we are required by state regulations to report those individuals as a finding and not validly licensed at that point in time. Next slide, please. Independent auditors report. We had briefly touched on it before. Page 1 has a different look this year. Basically communicates a little bit more information for you as regarding what management's responsibility is regarding the financial statements, as well as what the auditor's responsibilities are in relation to the financial statements. It puts the opinion right at the beginning, our opinion right at the beginning of that report, rather than putting it all the way at the end. So you can see right away at the beginning that we provided an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. And what that means is the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of Madison Metropolitan. There's always the possibility that there are errors in the financial statements that do not rise to the level of material. Our responsibility is to express an opinion on the financial statements, and ultimately the financial statements are the responsibility of the district. They're not the auditor's responsibility. Next slide, please. General fund balance on page 53. This is always an important item that the board looks at. The general fund is the main operating fund of the district. And as such, it's important to know how much fund balance the district has available to it. It's broken up into 4 different buckets at your district. The non-spendable is basically amounts that can't easily be converted into cash and be spent. At year end, you had about $5.9 million in that grouping. Restricted, those are amounts that are restricted by entities or organizations outside of the district itself, usually by grant agreements or creditors or laws or regulations. That amounted to about $1.8 million at the end of 2022. Assigned fund balance represents amounts that the board has constrained for future uses. And at year end, that's about $16.5 million. And the vast majority of the fund balance in the current year is unassigned. Those are funds that can be used for discretionary purposes at the district makes the decision on how to use those dollars. It's always imperative that you keep an amount that is sufficient in that assigned fund balance, so you don't have to do any larger interim borrowing than is necessary, because when you do interim borrowing, ultimately you end up paying interest on that borrowing, and the less interest you have to pay, obviously, the more you have available to fund district operations. Overall, general fund balance at year end was approximately $97.4 million, which we feel is a healthy fund balance at year end and should allow the district to operate in the manner that it so chooses going forward. Next slide, please. Unassigned fund balance, we typically, when we have talked to you, the minimum amount that we indicate you should have in your unassigned fund balance is approximately 2 months of operating expenditures, which would come out to be about 16%. And when we look at the unassigned general fund balance at year end, about 73.2 million. When we compare that to total expenditures in the general fund, that results in a percentage of approximately 16.5%, which is right around the 16%, just a little bit less than what was there at the end of last year, which was 17.2%. Next slide, please. Upcoming GASB statements that you might see a change in your financial statements for GASB 96, subscription-based information technology arrangements. It's basically like the lease standard, except it relates to information technology arrangements where you have a subscription to be using that information technology. You will record a right of use asset for that, and depending on the length of that agreement, you will also record a liability for that and then amortize that right of use asset over the life of that agreement, and you'll record expense over the length of that agreement as well. Other than that, we don't believe that there's any other statements out there that would have a significant impact on the district's reporting going forward. And I think that's the last slide. Yes. I would open it up for any questions that you may have at this point.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Natalie, did you have anything you wanted to add before the board engages in conversation or discussion of the audit?
No, unless you want to read out loud the 70-page report. No.
I think we're a little late in the night for that length of bedtime story. However, I want to open it up for discussion, and I guess I'll start by asking, I want to direct 2 questions at you, Natalie. So my first question is around our fund balance. And in our current year, we have spent down our fund balance in part by giving significant pay increases to staff. So recurring expenses be using kind of the one-time dollars that is fund balance. And still, we have a significant number of vacancies that is generating a cost savings. Can you talk to us a little bit about kind of foreshadowing for our next budget, where we'll be in terms of fund balance? So will we continue to see the trend of being at around 17 or 16% of our budget, or are we getting closer to a fund balance that is in alignment with board policy at around 15%.
I truly believe that we are really moving closer to a fund balance that is more in line with our policy of 15%. When you look at what created, first of all, we only had a surplus last year of 6.7 million, 6.7 million over budget. That 6.7 million was directly related to one-time money that was not expected, not budgeted for. We were upstairs kind of doing the high fives because very rarely do you, it is Ross, okay, come in so tight and exact on the budget. And we did. If we had not had that surprise money show up, we would have been right on it. So I see that that is where we are going to be moving as we continue to struggle with the increases of prices, increases in salaries, increases in operations. I think Ross puts together a really tight budget, and it's evident as we've moved through this pandemic that we're kind of trending on cycle with him, with what his expectations have been.
Thank you so much for that response, Natalie. And I want to thank you and Ross and your entire department for all the work that you all have done to produce this audit. Every year, some of the findings seem to kind of repeat and rise to the top. And I think that some of those findings have multiple players involved, right? So in terms of teacher licensure, our relationship with DPI and where DPI is at in their process is a tremendous indicator of how well that is going to show up on our audit. Can you talk through kind of how the pandemic has impacted that process of teacher licensure?
So, and I say this having worked at DPI years ago on the school finance team, DPI's licensing process is cumbersome. We have 426 school districts out there with teachers being licensed and turnover and the requirements that DPI has. That department has always been behind. Getting the list of no valid licenses out to auditors and to the districts in June or July at the end of the fiscal year, not at the beginning of the fiscal year when the reports are actually filed with DPI by the school districts. It takes them a year to get back to us as a district. The pandemic has really hit the Department of Public Instruction hard. Every department at the state level is understaffed, and licensing is really seeing a slowdown. We did not receive the report from DPI until September of this year. That late, the audit was done. Yeah. So that's your answer.
Like, I don't think that's good news, but I greatly appreciate the transparency in kind of what the moving parts of that element of our audit. The other thing I think I want to bring up in terms of findings, because we see it regularly. So every year that I've been on the board, the fund associated with field trips or kind of school clubs has been something we want to examine our systems for to make sure that we're keeping track of those resources thoughtfully and with integrity. What is the recommendation given this year's findings in that area to improve that funding?
So something we actually took that as an opportunity to implement stronger procedures and internal controls, which were actually positively received at the school building level. So for years, we have been requesting permission to ask the school building secretaries to do what we do internally here at Doyle. We would never pay an invoice without an invoice. We would never, without approvals and seeing the documentation and having everything actually saved online. We were trusting this building secretaries to actually have that. And when the auditors would come in and do their reviews, they would supply all that information. As a result of this findings, Ross gave us the go-ahead to say, yes, okay, move forward. They will now enter all of that information into the accounting software, into Munis, so that we can review and approve it beforehand.
Okay.
That recommendation was actually positively received by the building secretaries, immediately implemented. It's really been very helpful in allowing us to help them do their jobs. So it actually was a great opportunity.
That's really great to hear.
Yeah.
And I greatly appreciate the ability for central office to help create systems uniformly across the district that empower our staff to keep track of that, because I think the truth is folks within our schools are balancing a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that this work, you know, whether it's somebody handing their kid a $20 bill to get, to get to be part of a field trip,
Right.
it gets to be a lot to keep track of. So I greatly appreciate you all creating a system that folks can engage with easily and consistently throughout the district. Further discussion or questions? Board Member Gomez-Schmidt.
Yeah, thank you for this report and for discussing the audit findings with us. I guess my my question just follows up on what Board President Muldrow asked, is when we do have findings, how do we do the follow-up to make sure that, and how do we check internally before the next audit occurs to make sure that we are addressing all of the issues that came up?
So one of the things that we have always done as a result of the audit is the auditors have, and when I was the auditor, before I was the comptroller here, I was actually your auditor. The auditors have always provided the district a list of, here's the issues. These are the 2 issues that are coming to the report, but there are always smaller issues and opportunities for improvement that are provided by the auditors. First of all, by topic, and second of all, by specific buildings. So through our budget liaison process, we actually meet with those specific buildings immediately. We don't even wait for this audit to come out. We've already talked to the specific buildings back in August, so that we start the new school year moving forward. Okay? If you wait until this audit comes out, they've already spent 6 months not in corrective action mode. So we address it immediately. With the secretary meetings that we have, we actually present to the secretaries the universal. We obviously don't target buildings in the global secretary meetings. We go through the topics that needed improvement and what happened and what they can be doing and reminding them. But because we actually have a strong process in which we have a budget liaison process with the principals and the secretaries, we're actually able to have candid conversations with them at the time that these things are identified.
Thank you. That's helpful. The last question that I have for you is the unassigned fund balance. We have a policy that says that should be between 10 and 15%. The auditor, Rob, they're explaining that it's recommended that we have 2 months of our operating, which is 16%. So I guess my question would be, do we need to take a look at our policy and the upper threshold of that given this recommendation, or is the 15, 16% close enough?
I first of all, as a former auditor, it is commendable that the district has a policy on fund balance, okay, that they acknowledge the need to have the fund balance. Where the auditors get the 16% is that if we were to have an interruption in tax collection, which was a possibility 2 years ago, when the state legislators agreed to hold back the payment of taxes until a month later. If you were to have an interruption of equalization aid, which has happened. Back when I was at DPI, which was 9 years ago, we did have a hold on the payment of equalization aid. You need to have 2 months of reserves in order to continue to operate. That is where that 16% comes in. If you were to have a shutdown of business, for some reason we were to have to, which we did somewhat, you would have to still pay our teachers. That's where that 16% comes in.
Okay.
So it is a recommendation. So I think the board would need to decide if they wanted to increase from 15 to 16, but I will say it is commendable that we have a policy.
Yeah. I just think when we think about that policy, thinking of 10 to 15, I think we think that then we should be somewhere in the middle range of that, like 12 or 13. But if what we're being recommended is that we should really be around 16, I think we need to have a discussion about that, so that we're not landing ourselves in a spot where we don't have that amount that's recommended by the auditor. So just something for future discussion, I think. Thank you. And thank you, Rob, who I still see you online there, for the presentation tonight.
Oh, there he is.
Board Member Nichols.
Yes, I have a question. I think this is more for for Rob as the auditor. So during this year that you audited, we were aware from updates that there was a supply chain issue and that some of the things that we needed to order or purchase, for even some of our one-time funding, but also our referendum updates, we could not do all of that in the fiscal year that we needed to do it. And so some of those funds kind of were on a placeholder for the new fiscal year so that the supply chain issues could be met. I'm just curious, when you did the audit, do you have a way of being able to like see that? And then how is that noted in the actual audit, that those funds were like previously intended for another purchase or intent, and then it moves over into the next fiscal year?
The easiest answer that I could give to you regarding that would be, we don't specifically know what that dollar amount would have been related to supply chain issues. But at year end, when Natalie and Ross are looking at the amounts that are left in the budget and then looking at what had been budgeted for in the fiscal year, that's kind of where the assigned fund balance comes into play with, is if it was previously planned on being expended, but for whatever reason it wasn't completed by year end, that amount would carry over as part of the assigned to be spent in the next fiscal year.
So
That's great. Thank you.
Page 53, there is a list specifically of what makes up the assigned. And you can be assigned for two ways. We actually looked at all of our open purchase orders. So things that were actually ordered in motion and not received. Playgrounds. We had playgrounds ordered, but they had not come in. They had not been installed. Trucks and equipment, science curriculum, classroom furniture. There was a lot of classroom furniture out there. Building carryover. The building carryover, in accordance with GASB's assigned, really required the buildings to identify items they had ordered that they thought were going to come in by June 30th and did not. And so we were not going to be able to hit their next year's formula for things that they thought were coming in the prior year. So we allowed them to carry it over, but they were specifically identified in accordance with the rules of assigned fund balance. You are not permitted to assign fund balance for cash flow purposes. That's under the old GASB rules. The new ones were like you had to be able to assign specifically benches, trees, tangible items that you could identify. And if they did not come to, we would be able to report to the board how we actually used that money. Yeah, it was so that we can't just squirrel away money. It has to be identified for specific items.
Any further discussion or questions? All right, thank you so much, Natalie, and thank you all for presenting the audit and for all the work that goes into this.
They're done with 20.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Yana, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All those in favor? Motion carries 6-0. See you next year.
Everyone, please